this and post it when I get the recording back on the team website in case you need to review it again. Micah, will you do the recording, please?
It's already started.
All right, thanks. So this is our February office hour. We have our disclaimer about AI tools. The state of Tennessee does not allow AI tools in our meetings. As such, we will remove those as we see them come in. Today, we're going to talk about pacing and monitoring observations. We've got some resources and some next steps to share with you. Observation pacing, as you know, is based on a combination of teacher licensure status and the individual growth score or the level of overall effectiveness, their LOE score. Some districts choose to base pacing on individual growth scores. That is an option on our flexibility survey that you fill out each year. Otherwise, everybody's based off of an LOE score. This is the pacing guidance. It's in two different buckets depending on your licensure status. So we've got professional and practitioner. A per-meter waiver would fall under the practitioner licensure group. A practitioner with an LOE or individual growth score of a 1 to 4 for the prior year will need the full, the maximum number of observations. This is the minimum number required. Please remember, it's the minimum number that is required. They have to have at least 3 instruction 2 planning to environment. If as a district or a principal, you want to do another observation on a teacher, you can do that. That this is the minimum number that they have to have. We also have a minimum recommended number of minutes for those. Again, it's broken into professionalism. Any teacher that is a level 5 has 1 of each domain required throughout the year. All teachers shall have at least 1/2 of the observations that are unannounced. A minimum of 1 observation must be announced. So for teachers that score a level 5, their required observation must be unannounced because you're requiring to do 1, and that 1 must be unannounced. All observations for teachers using the school services personnel rubric are announced because they need to keep students' privacy at the forefront of the evaluation practice. So they have to be announced. LEAs and charters using the team model may choose to allow observers to combine domains during their observation, provided that the amount of time, the semester, the distribution, and notice are all met. The number of required observations for an educator who has a PYE in the previous year is determined by their level in the school year immediately preceding the PYE. If you run into a case where a teacher was PYE for 2 years, you continue to go back a year until you find a year that they are not PYE or don't have, and they could not have an LOE for that year, but you go back to the first year that they are not PYE, and pacing is determined based on that. So if that first year after the PYE, if they don't have an LOE, they receive full pacing. A non-PYE teacher without an LOE in the previous year shall have the maximum number of observations conducted based on their licensure type. So as you're looking at your teachers this year, if you have teachers who did not have an LOE last year, they should have the maximum number. You can check their record to see what data is missing. If they don't have an LOE, they're probably missing a piece of data. If they're either missing an observation score, an achievement measure score, or a growth measure score, those can still be added and generate an LOE. But we are into the second semester, but those can be generated. To monitor pacing with TNCompass, you can use the pacing guide report. It's under the reports tab. Make sure you're downloading it for the 24-25 school year. You can select it by your district or by individual schools. I suggest downloading it in an Excel format. Once you generate that, it is It has lots of columns, so I've hidden some of the columns here. But we're in the academic year. Make sure you've got the right academic year. Your teacher type, your educator type is going to be teacher or administrator. If they are PYE, currently marked PYE, will be shown in column K. The evaluation model will be team. This will only run for the team model. If you are using an alternative observation model, you won't be able to use this pacing report because you import all of your observations, but you need to be monitoring your pacing in your system. It also gives us the pacing license. So this is the license that pacing is being set from. So a practitioner, first issuance, that's a brand new teacher. You can see that this teacher is required to have a minimum of 3 in column N. This teacher has had 1 instruction observed. For planning, they're required to have 2. They've had 1. And environment, they are required to have 2, and they've had none of those observations done. The professionalism, everybody's required that. The professionalism requirement is 1, and it has not been observed, which is not unusual. That's usually done at the end of the school year. The second teacher is a permit or waiver. If you have teachers who are on permit or waivers, you should be observing them. They're going to need the maximum required, because if they're on a permit or waiver, if this is their first issuance, they don't have an LOE. So they have the full amount. You can see that this teacher also has 1. They've not had an environment and also have not had the professionalism. Column V tells you if pacing has been met. At this point, nobody in your system probably has pacing met because of the professionalism. And the third teacher has a professional license, 10-year. This teacher's required 2 instructional observations throughout the year. That tells me they were a level 2, between a 2 or a 4 last year with their LOE. They have had no instruction observed. They should have had 1 in the fall. They haven't had it. You can still do it. The TNCompass will take those observations, but just remember, you need to monitor that. Minimum planning is 1. That has not been done yet. Their environment has not been done, and their professionalism. So this teacher has not been observed at all yet. So pacing is not met. I would start checking this. You can download this by school. Your principals can download it for their school to help them make sure that they are meeting pacing. There's some additional reports in TNCompass regarding observations. You have your staff observers report that tells you the names and the roles of all the educators in your district who have passed 1 or both of the team certification tests for evaluation. As you know, only certified staff can observe teachers or leaders, and permissions to observe can be granted in the administration tab to teachers who are doing observations. The observation summary report provides a complete status of observations and walkthroughs by schools. It includes the total number of observations, announced observations, total scored observation, total walkthrough observations, and the total by domain. And then the observation summary report by district provides the completion status of observations and walkthroughs by the district. So as a district, you can see where you are in your completion. I want to take just a minute to talk about class observations. Class is a team rubric that is available to be used with your pre-K teachers. You can use, so for the 25-26 school year, all VPK and special ed preschool teachers are required to be observed using both the class assessment scoring system and the class environment tool as a coaching and feedback. The observations must be conducted by a reliably trained district staff. This is not a requirement for evaluation. This is a requirement from early learning that everybody has to do this. If you are a team district, you may select to use either the team rubric or class evaluation rubric for evaluations. You're still going to have to, if you decide you want to use the team rubric for your pre-K teachers, that's fine, but you still have to do those class observations. So you will only one type of observation can be used in TNCompass for evaluations. So you'll have to decide if you're using the team or the class rubric. You will make that determination on the flexibility survey that'll be completed later this spring. Team districts who elect to use class will enter the class observations into TNCompass. Team districts who elect to use the team observation rubric for pre-K teachers will enter the team observation in TNCompass. You can't use both of them in TNCompass. You have to do all of one or the other. District who use an approved alternative evaluation model, anything that's not the team rubric, cannot utilize class as an observation for evaluation. Team districts who elect to use class as their observation tool will indicate this on the annual flexibility survey. Class certifications, they are valid for a school year. Certifications expire on June 30th, very much like the team certifications. Observers must pass a reliability test each year for class. The Early Learning Division offers several trainings for district representatives who will be conducting those class observations for the 25-26 school year. This is information on registering for that. We don't have anything to do with this training. We're just giving you this information in case you need it. You need to work with your preschool supervisor or coordinator to make a determination on what you're going to do. Your next steps are to monitor your pacing to make sure that all your educators are on track to meet the required pacing. You can share your pacing reports with observers. Please update your contacts in TNCompass. Sometimes people have changes after the Christmas break. And talk with your pre-K team to determine what your district plans to do for 25-26 regarding class before this flexibility survey opens this spring. Here's some resources for you. There is a document that has an overview of the TNCompass charts and reports, which will tell you about these observation reports. PYE exemptions information is here, and the administrator observation user guide can be helpful for administrators in planning observations. These are our support emails. I think you all are familiar with those. These are other support emails from the department to help you get answers to other questions. Appreciate you coming today. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Can you clarify? Pre-K has to be observed with class, right? Or do systems have options?
My understanding is that all pre-K teachers, you have to observe them with this class rubric.
With that you receive VPK funding.
If you receive VPK funding, you have to observe them with the class rubric. However, you do not have to use that class rubric as their observation tool for an LOE. You can use the team rubric, which means somebody has to be certified to observe using class in your district, and it's going to have to do those. And then you have your team observations, team observers who are certified that can do the team observations. If you want to do the team, you just put team in the team observations in TNCompass as normal. If you choose on your flexibility survey to use the class observation tool for their evaluation, then you put those in TNCompass. You will choose that rubric on the drop down in TNCompass.
I've got a clarifying question about the class. I had something too. So we only have like one person in our district that is certified for class. So if they only have to do, I'm thinking of like a new teacher that I just hired that has to have, the full gamut on team, like, or, that we're used to. Would they have to have the same amount of class then? Like, is it, if we chose on the flexibility model to allow our preschool teachers to only have to use class, would that correlate with the same amount of observations that we would have had to use with the team rubric?
They are not the same amount of observations. Class requires more observations than team, but that we don't handle class observations. That would be a question for the early learning team, which is in that that contact Liz Newsom for more information on how many observations you have to do based on their licensure, because I'm not sure how class differentiates with license and such.
Would those teachers still be able to populate an LOE if we chose class?
Yes.
Yes.
So TNCompass converts for you your class scores into a team scale. And so you put in your class scores and it automatically converts for you. Okay, our next question is, if we have hired a person for a leave after January, they should still be coded PYE and therefore not be able to enter observations or do observations and then code PYE so we do have the data points.
You can do it either way, but when you mark them as PYE, those observations that you have put in TNCompass, you're not going to be able to see anymore. So you could mark them PYE, go on and do observations that if you feel the need to do those, go on and do your observations and just not put them in TNCompass. Or you can put them in TNCompass, but when you mark them PYE, that's all going to collapse and go away.
What would be the benefits of choosing team instead of class if they all have to have class for funding?
It's a district decision.
We support both. It is your choice.
Amy, I have a question going back to where I jumped in the webinar about observation pacing and being a PYE. And it says go back if they did not produce an LOE because they were PYE, then you go back to the previous year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If I remember correctly in TNCompass, when it comes up for the year and they were PYE the previous year, it's going to show they need the full suite of observations, right?
It will go back until the first year that there's not an LOE. So if they're PYE, if they were PYE for 23, 24, 24, 25 to determine pacing, you're going to look back to 22, 23. If they don't have an LOE for 22, 23, they're going to require full pacing. If they are PYE for 22, 23, then you're going to go back to 21, 22 until you either find an LOE or not LOE or a non-PYE year. If it's not, if you have some that are not updating correctly, if you've got somebody whose pacing looks off because of that, email team questions with that teacher's name and license number, and we can look at it.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Sometimes the pacing, we have to reset pacing, but that's a pretty easy fix. Just email team questions with the teacher's name and license number, and we can take a look at that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all the questions in the chat.
All right. I appreciate y'all taking time today to join us. Please, as always, reach out with any questions that you may have.